Hello, sports fans. Welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 18 NFL predictions. So last week, I had a record of 12-4, and that brings my record on the season to 161-95. But we'll have to see how I do this week because there are some games that could truly go either way with teams resting starters. So kicking things off with the two games we have on Saturday, starting off with the Ravens hosting the Steelers. So the Ravens, they have locked up the number one seed in the AFC after dismantling the Dolphins last week. And they have nothing to play for, so be resting the MVP favorite Lamar Jackson. So Tyler Huntley will be the starting quarterback for the Ravens. Now they haven't said anything about resting any other key starters. The only thing we know is Lamar isn't playing. And while the Ravens have nothing to play for, the Steelers are playing for a potential playoff spot, as they currently sit at 9-7 and are the 9 seed in the AFC, and they can make the playoffs with a win and a loss by the Bills or a loss by the Jaguars. And there's some other scenarios too, but they're a bit unrealistic as they involve a lot of ties. But Kenny Pickett is healthy this week for the Steelers, but they will be sticking with Mason Rudolph at quarterback for the third week in a row, as the team is 2-0 with Rudolph at quarterback, and the offense is pretty good as well, as they have their only two 30-point games with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, running the offense. So this is a game that can definitely go either way. I'm more inclined to pick the Steelers because the Ravens are resting starters, and obviously Lamar Jackson is such a huge part of that team in the offense, and without him, I don't really think the Ravens will have a ton of offensive success, especially against a good Steelers defense that allows just 19.6 points a game. So I'm going to take the Steelers to remain in playoff contention and beat the Ravens by a score of 24-17, but this is a game that can definitely go either way. Moving on, we have the Texans at the Colts. So we will actually have a live watch party for this game starting about 8:10 Eastern Time on Saturday, so I hope to see you guys there. But now, not only is this going to be a great game, but this game is a playoff game. The winner makes the playoffs, the loser is out. And the winner can also end up winning the AFC South if the Jaguars lose to the Titans. But this is a high-stakes game that could go either way. I'm expecting this game to be a higher-scoring game as both teams are good on the offensive side of the ball, as the Texans score 22.1 points per game and the Colts score 23.6 points per game. Now, defensively is where the difference comes for these two teams, because the Texans are 13th in the league, allowing 20.9 points per game, while the Colts allow 24.5 points a game, which is 27th in the NFL. Now, the Colts won this matchup in Week 2, but obviously a lot has changed between Week 2 and now. So this is a game that can definitely go either way. The Colts are at home, but I think CJ Stroud is the better quarterback than Gardner Minshew. Even though Gardner Minshew is having a good season, CJ Stroud is the better quarterback. I think that's the difference, and the Texans win this game and make the playoffs and win this game by a score of 28-24. Moving to the games on Sunday, starting off with the Browns at the Bengals. So this is a meaningless game for both teams. The Browns have locked up the number 5 seed in the AFC, and the Bengals have been eliminated from playoff contention. Now, the Browns will be resting key starters, and one of those players is Joe Flacco. So the Browns will be starting a franchise record 5th different quarterback this season, as they will be starting Jeff Driscoll at quarterback. Now, Driscoll has not played a snap this season, but he's seen some playing time in his career as he's completed 59.2% of his passes for 2,228 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 8 picks. Now, Driscoll faces a bad Bengals pass defense that allows 255 passing yards per game, which is 4th worst in the NFL. So I could see him having some success through the air. Then on the other side of things, the Bengals also have nothing to play for. But if the Browns rest some key defensive starters, I would expect the Bengals offense to be able to outscore a Jeff Driscoll-led Browns offense. And if it comes down to the Bengals offense against the Browns offense with Jeff Driscoll, I'm going to take the Bengals offense 10 times out of 10. This is another game that could go either way, and I have no idea because the team's resting starters. But I'm going to take the Bengals in a close one by a score of 23-16. Moving on, we have the Vikings at the Lions. So the Vikings have had a revolving door at quarterback since Kirk Cousins got hurt, as they've started Jaren Hall, Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Jaren Hall again, and now they're back to Nick Mullins after he replaced Jaren Hall at halftime last week. Now, the Vikings aren't mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, but it's pretty unlikely for them to make the playoffs, as they're going to need a win and losses by the Packers, Seahawks, and either the Buccaneers or the Saints. Now, speaking of the playoffs, the Lions have clinched the division and have either the 2 seed or 3 seed, but won't be resting starters this week, and the Lions can get the 2 seed with a win and a loss by the Eagles and the Cowboys. Now, these two teams played 2 weeks ago when the Lions won by a score of 30-24, and in that game, Nick Mullins was also the quarterback for the Vikings, but he threw 4 interceptions, which is what got him benched in the first place. But now, with the bad situation at quarterback for the Vikings, I just don't see them winning this game. I think this will be a close game. I don't think it will be quite as high scoring as the first time these two teams met, but I've got the Lions with the win by a score of 24-13. Up next, we have the Jaguars at the Titans. So this is a game that the Jaguars need. They snapped their 4-game losing streak last week with a win over the Panthers, but the Jaguars are still tied for the divisional lead, and they can win the division with a win. Now, both teams are dealing with injuries to their starting quarterbacks, as Trevor Lawrence has a shoulder injury and is listed as questionable. And for the Titans, Will Levis has a foot injury and has been ruled out for the game. So Ryan Tannehill will get the start for Tennessee. Now, the Titans struggle to score no matter who's at quarterback, as they score just 17.3 points per game, and they don't have to keep up with a Jaguars offense that scores 22.3 points a game, and they also have to score on a pretty good Jaguars defense that has 21.4 points per game. So I don't think the Titans will be able to do enough offensively, and I have the Jaguars getting the win and winning the AFC South as well, and winning by a score of 22-17. Moving on, we have the Jets at the Patriots. So this is a game where I have absolutely no idea who will win. The Patriots are bad, especially offensively, as they score just 14.6 points per game, and they don't have to face an elite Jets defense. Now, the Jets offense isn't much better, as they score just 15.7 points a game, and they will be starting Trevor Siemian at quarterback again, as Zach Wilson remains out with a concussion. Now, as bad as the Patriots have been, they've owned the Jets, as they've won 15 straight against the Jets, with the Jets' last win coming in 2015. So this is a game that could go either way. And as bad as the Patriots have been, I think they could definitely beat the Jets, but all streaks have to end eventually, and I think the Patriots' winning streak against the Jets ends this week, and the Jets win behind their defense in a really boring game by a score of 10-6. And something to note here, this could be the final game for Bill Belichick as the Patriots head coach. That's something to keep an eye on to make this game maybe a little bit more interesting. Because otherwise, I don't think a single person is going to want to watch this game. Moving on, we have the Falcons visiting the Saints. So both these teams can actually make the playoffs by winning the NFC South, but both teams need to win this game to have a chance at the division, and will also need the Buccaneers to lose to the Panthers. Now, the Saints can actually make the playoffs even if they don't win the division, and they can do that with a win and losses by the Seahawks and Packers. Now, this is a tough game to predict because I don't really think either of these teams are playoff caliber teams, and they're also pretty similar teams with an inconsistent offense and a defense that's the strength of the team. Offensively, the Saints score 22.1 points per game, and the Falcons score 19 points per game. And defensively, the Saints allow 19.4 points a game, and the Falcons allow 20.3 points per game. So both these teams are pretty similar, especially statistically. The Saints are the better statistical team on both sides of the ball, but by a small margin. They're also home, and I think the Saints will beat the Falcons by a score of 20-16. But this is another game that could definitely go either way. Moving on, we have the Buccaneers at the Panthers. So the Buccaneers can win the division and clinch a playoff spot with a win, and that should be pretty easy as they face a bad Panthers team. Now, Baker Mayfield is dealing with a rib injury, and his status for this week's game is uncertain. And if he can't play, then it'll be Kyle Trask at quarterback for the Bucs. Now, even if it is Kyle Trask for the Buccaneers, it will be the second week in a row the Panthers are playing at the backup quarterback, as they lost to C.J. Beathard and the Jaguars last week. Now, the Panthers are just awful all around. Their offense is the second worst scoring offense in the NFL, scoring just 14.8 points per game. Their defense is bad, allowing 25.4 points per game, which is third worst in the league. So with how bad the Panthers are, it won't matter who the Buccaneers have at quarterback, and the Buccaneers will win the NFC South by beating the Panthers by a score of 24-14. Up next, we have the Bears at the Packers. So the Packers have a very straightforward path to the playoffs. Win and you're in. Plus, they get to face a team they've owned as well, as the Packers have won 9 games in a row against the Bears and 13 of the last 14. Now, this game is also at Lambeau, a place the Bears have not beaten the Packers since 2015. Now, the Bears have been playing well lately, winning 2 in a row and 4 of their last 5. So this will be a close game. And the Bears' offense has been playing well during that 5-game stretch, as they're averaging 24.2 points per game. And they also face the Packers' defense that has struggled mightily during that same span, allowing 23.4 points per game. On the other side of things, the Packers' offense has scored at least 30 points in back-to-back games, while the Bears are allowing 22.6 points per game. So I think this will actually end up being a pretty entertaining game and turning into a shootout. And I really do think the Bears have a chance to finally beat the Packers. But in the end, the Packers are home. They're playing for their season, and they do own the Bears. And the Packers will get the win and make the playoffs in what ends up being a really entertaining high-scoring game, 30-27. Up next, we have the Broncos visiting the Raiders. So both these teams are now eliminated from playoff contention after the Chiefs clinched the AFC West last week. Now, I have no idea who's going to win this game, because neither team has anything to play for. The Broncos are going to be starting Jarrett Stidham at quarterback again, and he was okay last week with 224 yards and a touchdown. Now, the Raiders, they've been playing well lately, but they did lose to the Colts because they couldn't run the football. Now, I think that trend will reverse itself, and they will be able to run the football this week because the Broncos have the third worst run defense in the NFL. So I think the Raiders will be able to run the football effectively, and they will win this game by a score of 18-14, but this is a true coin flip between teams that have nothing to play for. Up next, we have the Eagles at the Giants. So the Eagles have been struggling as they've lost 4 of their last 5 games, and in those 5 games, their defense has been awful, allowing 31 points per game. And their defense has also been bad on the season, giving up 25.1 points per game on the season, which is fourth worst in the NFL. Now, the Giants' offense has struggled this season, scoring just 14.9 points per game, but their offense has scored 25 points in back-to-back weeks, and one of those weeks was against the Eagles. So I could actually see the Giants scoring enough points and pulling off the upset like the Cardinals did last week, especially because the Giants are the better defensive team than the Cardinals. But the Eagles need this game in the worst way possible. They also need to win this game to have a chance to win the NFC East. So I'm going to take the Eagles winning by a score of 33-24, but this is a game where I would not be shocked to see an upset, but I've got the Eagles coming out on top. Up next, we have the Seahawks at the Cardinals. So the Seahawks' path to the playoffs got a lot tougher last week after their loss to the Steelers, but they can still make it to the postseason with a win and a Packers loss. Now, the Cardinals have nothing to play for, but they did just upset the Eagles, so maybe they can play spoiler again. Now, the Cardinals were able to pull off the upset last week because the Eagles' defense is bad. Now, the Seahawks' defense isn't much better, allowing 23.9 points per game. Well, with this being a must-win game for the Seahawks, I think they get the job done and win by a score of 30-26. But this is another game where I would not be shocked to see an upset. Next game, we have the Chargers hosting the Chiefs. So this is shockingly another game I could see going either way because the Chiefs are locked into the number 3 seed in the AFC, and they have nothing to play for. So that means they'll be resting key starters like Patrick Mahomes. So that means Blaine Gabbert will be the starter for the Chiefs. Now, the Chargers have been really banged up and have lost 4 in a row. And while the Chiefs' offense won't do much without Patrick Mahomes, I don't think the Chiefs' defense will let the Chargers' offense do much either. So I think this is going to be one of those games where it is very difficult to predict, where both teams are resting starters, or at least one team is, and the other team is just playing backups because of injuries. But I think the Chiefs win this game because of their defense, and I'm going to take the Chiefs to win this game in another boring game, 17-3. Next game, we have the Rams at the 49ers. So this is another tough game to predict with both teams in the playoffs and going to be resting starters. Although the 49ers will only be resting one starter, and that is their starting quarterback, Brock Purdy. But I wouldn't expect the other key players to play the entire game for the Niners. Now, the Rams, they're resting most of their key players, so this is going to be a tough one to predict, especially because our quarterback battle is Carson Wentz against Sam Darnold. But I'm going to take the 49ers in this matchup because of their defense and because most of their starters will play at least part of the game. So 49ers win this game by a score of 23-14, but this is another game that could go either way, and it's very tough to predict because of teams resting starters. Up next, we have the Cowboys at the Commanders. The Cowboys can lock up the number 2 seed and the NFC East with a win. And they face a Commanders team, a team that has lost 7 straight games, and a team with a terrible defense, allowing 30 points per game. The Cowboys beat the Commanders by a score of 45-10 when these two teams met for the first time on Thanksgiving. Now, the Commanders actually have a weird quarterback situation because they were going to start Jacoby Brissett last week, but he couldn't play because of a hamstring injury, so they ended up starting Sam Howell, and now Howell will be playing this week again. Now, I really don't think it matters who's quarterback for the Commanders because the Cowboys should destroy the Commanders. As the Cowboys score 29.4 points a game, the Commanders give up 30 points a game, as I said a second ago. The Cowboys should dominate this game on both sides of the ball, but especially offensively. And the Cowboys dominate this game and win the NFC East with a commanding 38-7 win over the Commanders. And our final game, it is Sunday Night Football. We have the Bills at the Dolphins. So we will have a live watch party for this game started by 8:15 Eastern Time on Sunday. So again, I hope to see you guys there. But this is a massive game for both teams, as the winner will win the AFC East and also get the number 2 seed in the AFC. The Dolphins, they've already clinched a playoff spot. Now, the Bills, they haven't clinched a playoff spot, but they can still make the playoffs even if they end up losing, and they can do so with a loss by the Steelers or Jaguars. Now, the Dolphins are coming off a terrible game against the Ravens where they lost 56-19, and the Bills are red hot, winning 4 games in a row. Now, I'm expecting this game to be a shootout as both teams have great offenses, as the Dolphins score 30.1 points per game, and the Bills score 26.9 points per game. Now, defensively, there are some differences, especially because the Dolphins allowed 56 last week against the Ravens, and they also allowed 23.1 on the season. Now, the Bills are allowing 18.6 points per game on the year, which is 4th best in the NFL. So this is a game I could see going either way, but the Bills are better on both sides of the ball, just like the Ravens were last week. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see a blowout like we saw with the Ravens and Dolphins last week. I think we're going to actually see a pretty close game, but I think the Bills are the better team defensively, the more well-rounded team overall, and the Bills will beat the Dolphins for the second time this season and win the AFC East by a score of 31-23. But those are my Week 18 NFL predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible. Make sure to check out the community tab of my channel where you guys can vote on who you think will win some of this week's big games. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you in the next video.